Here's one for you. So I'm just after coming out of Gravity Climbing Gym there. It's a bouldering gym in Dublin. Highly recommend it if you're into bouldering or climbing, or if you're looking for a new thing to get into. Look up Gravity Climbing Gym Dublin. Great spot. No ropes, no harnesses, no messing. Just walls you can climb on, and the floor is, a 3 foot thick sponge. So even if you do fall off, there's a limit to how much you can cripple yourself. I got into it a little under a year ago. Love it, fantastic, brilliant, whatever. But the hours climbing that I just spent there, I thoroughly enjoyed. Now, I don't always thoroughly enjoy it, but whenever I don't thoroughly enjoy it, like most things that I do and I don't enjoy, it's much more of a reflection on the state of mind I had walking into the place, generally speaking, broad sweeping generalization alert, than the staff or the different types of climbs or whatever it is. So even if you're out at a wedding and somebody asks you the next day, what was the wedding like? If the wedding was a bit shit, was the wedding a bit shit, or were you just in pissy fucking humour? Because if you were to ask me over the last couple of days even, or the last week or so, how has the last month or two been for me? If I was to answer honestly, I would have said, pretty fucking shit. But that's not because of all the things that have gone wrong in my life in the last month or two. It's entirely due to a whole host of factors, but the umbrella term is I've been in pissy humour. That's why I haven't been getting on too good. And the hour I spent climbing there, on what is effectively my lunch break, I thoroughly enjoyed. And I was just reflecting on how much I enjoyed it, because I haven't enjoyed anything I've done that much in a good while. Let's say several weeks or a month or two maybe. And I was just kind of trying to figure out what was different about today that made me enjoy that so much. Because I'd nearly go as far as to say I enjoyed myself so much there today in that hour that it was uncharacteristic of my life how much I enjoyed it. So that posed the question, well, what the fuck is different? What changed? And I think what changed was I was up early, as I always am. I'm productive enough, got the kids ready, brought them off, went down to work. The van was already loaded up. I printed out delivery dockets, made sure the lads had enough work to do for the rest of the day while I was out on the deliveries, and hit the road. So, busy. And then hopped in the van, went to delivery place A, B, C, D, emptied the van, drove straight to climbing, got in. So before I started climbing, I had a productive as fuck day. Now, on top of that, that's just a regular day. So that's my baseline productivity is the likes of that. Not every day, but particularly delivery days when I'm in the van, because it's driving the van takes up 5 or 6 hours of your day, so it's not hard to be productive with the other couple of hours, because there are things that have to be done outside of driving the van around. But anyway, what was it about today in particular? Because yes, I had a productive day, but I would often have productive days and wouldn't feel nearly as good about myself as I did during that climb and do now. And I know well what it is. Whilst I was doing my deliveries, I uploaded 4 videos identical to this, monologues as I'm driving. And there was multiple reasons why that would make me feel a little bit better about myself. One is you're compounding your productivity. So you're doing 2 things at once. And I could have been listening to a podcast. Now technically that's doing 2 things at once. Or I could be listening to an audiobook of some description. So you're getting your delivery done, and you read or listen to half your audiobook. That's you're doubling up on your productivity. But you've nothing really to show for it as such. But when you record something, as I'm doing now, and upload it for the world to see, it remains. This is, I think, 70 of 100, and in 10 years' time, it will still be 70 of 100. This might be the very last YouTube video I upload ever, but it will be forever the very last one that I upload forever. It remains in a way that it's not as fleeting as like, what did you do on your deliveries today? I uploaded a YouTube video. What did you do on your deliveries today? I listened to a fucking audiobook. Like, you know, the memory of you listening to that audiobook will be long forgotten. Whereas there's almost like a residue, a productivity residue of creating content, which is essentially what I'm doing now. Coupled with the fact that I've spoken about this before as well, that this is a form of self-help. This is therapy, essentially. I'm exercising the thoughts that are in my mind, and I'm making progress. Because in my mind, I ruminate over the same fucking thing all the time, regardless of what it's about. It could be a compliment I'm giving myself, it could be me berating myself, or it could be just me thinking about the mind-body-soul connection. But it doesn't matter what it is, I have a tendency to ruminate, which is essentially repeat the same fucking shit over and over and over again. I'm less likely to do that when I'm recording as I am now. It's not foolproof. I'm sure I'll have repeated myself in many of the podcasts that I've uploaded. But I'm not going to drone on about the same thing. I'm not going to drone on about something and then drone on about it again, and then drone on about it again, and then drone on about it again in the exact same way. Because, you know, in my mind, consciously or otherwise, there's an element of people have already heard that, or you said that last week. You know, freshen it up a bit. Whereas when you're ruminating, it's the opposite of that. You will just keep that shit on a fucking loop like a broken record all fucking day and night. I will, anyway. But I think out of all these different things, the real one is, and it ties into what I was saying about my son having a quote-unquote problem with overthinking. I was trying to get him to reframe his overthinking, not as a problem per se, but as a superpower. He has the ability to overthink. Put that ability to good use and think about, you know, all the good things that are going to happen, as opposed to what he has a tendency to do now, which is overthink. Use the power of overthinking to think about all the bad things that are going to happen. Like, it's not overthinking that's the problem per se, it's overthinking negative shit. So if you can turn that, you know, bad thing of yours into a good thing, well then Robert's your father's brother. And there's a, I don't know, is it a Nietzsche quote? It's not until we rebaptize the worst of us as the best of us that we can, you know, become completely fulfilled or whatever. I'm butchering that quote, but you get the sentiment. It's not until we rebaptize the worst of us as the best of us. So if you, I don't know if Fion's overthinking is the worst of him, probably, I would imagine not, but it doesn't have to be the worst of us. But it's, you could rephrase that slightly and say, it's not until we rebaptize our bad parts as our good parts that we will ever, you know, become fully actualized, or whatever way you want to word it. So if I can get Fionn to reframe his quote-unquote overthinking to be a positive force, then he can overthink all he wants about positive things, and he'll get all excited about the future as opposed to all nervous and apprehensive and anxious about the future. And I have to take a bit of my own fucking advice here, which is something I'm not prone to do. And I have to give myself a bit of a fucking break, because I have the same superpower of overthinking, or the same propensity to overthink. And it's typically not about how good things can be, it's typically about how bad things can be. Now, I do a bit of both, but I think over the last number of weeks I've definitely been leaning more on the side of thinking a lot about bad things as opposed to thinking a lot about good things. You kind of need both, because you don't want to be fucking delusional. If you're nothing but positivity all the time, you're probably being a little bit delusional. And if you're nothing but negativity all the time, you know, you probably need to give yourself a bit of a break. And that's what I desperately need to do. I need to leave myself alone. Like, if I will speak to myself in my own mind a certain way, and I'll do that for hours on end, days, weeks, months on end. I'll berate myself over not being this or not being that, or being too much this and not enough that, or whatever the fuck. But if I heard some other adult talking to some other adult in the exact same way and tone that I would speak to myself in my own mind, I'd tell them to cop the fuck onto themselves before they got a slap for their troubles. Leave them alone. But me fucking hole, shut the fuck up. You've made your point and fuck off. And that's basically, I need to stand up for me. I need to stand up for myself. You know, against myself. I need to stand up against myself for myself. If that makes any sense. Because without a shadow of a fucking doubt, I'd say I, but I'd nearly go as far as to say we as collectively humans, we're our own fucking worst enemy. I know I certainly am. I am my worst enemy, without a fucking shadow of a doubt. And I am no fucking me. I am no light adversary. You don't want me in your fucking bad side, that is for sure. But that's what I need to remind myself, because I'm often on my bad side. Like, you don't want me sniping at you. I can have a fucking fairly forked tongue when I want to. Now, I keep it under wraps for the overwhelming majority of the time. I'm a relatively placid, laid back, fucking stoic person. Like, I haven't lost a head with anybody in a fucking decade, like. God help the poor unfortunate soul that gets 2 barrels from me when I'm not in the fucking humour. And I wonder, do I not do that to other people because I get to flex that muscle enough doing it to myself? And again, the real benefit of saying these things out loud is I'll berate myself in my own head, but if I said it out loud, even if I wasn't recording it, even if there wasn't anybody else to hear it other than my physical body, my ears, like, I'll say awful horrible shit about myself to myself in my fucking head. But if I was to say that out loud, a certain part of me will go, that's not fair. You know, like, in my head, over and over, I could go, I'm not a good enough dad, I'm not a good enough husband, I'm not a good enough son, brother, business owner, employer, whatever way you want to phrase it, or whatever fucking term you want to put on it. You're shit at this, you're shit at that, you're shit at the other. I'll say that stuff in my head all day, all night, and no part of me will go, give yourself a fucking break, Fran. Leave yourself alone, Fran. You're not that awful, for fuck's sake. No part of me will pipe up. No part of me will come to my defence. But if I say it out loud, it's almost as though another part of me comes online, and I'd be relatively quick to go, you don't believe that. You know, maybe a little, yeah, maybe you're not a perfect husband, maybe you're not a fucking perfect dad, but you do well. Do you know, you do alright, like rooting the kids, they're not completely without complaint, but I mean, they could do a lot fucking worse, a lot worse. At worst, you're perfectly average. At worst, you're doing exactly as well as fucking everybody else. And that's at worst. And I can be honest about myself, because I fucking claim to be not by any means a perfect dad or husband or son or businessman or employer or whatever else. But if the spectrum is half bad and half good, you know, I might be close to the middle, but I'm certainly, I would say, on the half good side. I'm more fucking good than bad when it comes to being a parent, a husband, a dad, a son, etc., etc. And when I'm speaking, I don't mind admitting that. I don't feel like I'm blowing too much smoke up me hole for that, because, you know, I do make sacrifices and I don't do whatever the fuck I want all the time. And I am conscious of, you know, what's right for herself and the kids, as well as, you know, you have to think about yourself as well. Like, as they say, you have to lie down to be walked on. But I can say in good conscience that I'm not terrible certainly are times when, in my mind at least, I will fucking berate myself endlessly for, you know, being at the bottom of the shit side of that spectrum. But once it's in my head, nothing else pipes up. But when I say it out loud, it's almost as though another part of me comes online. Another part of me comes online, and importantly, comes to my defense. Which is a strange one. That requires further thought. Because it's reminding me of something I said only recently, that you can't think about two things at the same time. So let's say you're worried about, I don't know, your wife leaving you and you losing your job. You can think about those two things, and you can worry about those two things, but you can only alternate between them. You can only worry about one and then worry about the other, and then worry about one and then worry about the other. You can't simultaneously think of two things at the same time. Maybe some people can. I fucking can't. So when I'm busy berating myself, it's almost as though I'm using the full bandwidth to berate myself. There's no room for anything else to come online and go, here, fucking cop on, leave yourself alone. So when you're not vocalizing it, when it's all just in your head, it tends to be, you know, one or the other. You're a good person or you're a bad person. But if you're saying that you're a good person out loud, then maybe another part of you is online to go, you could be better. You're not fucking perfect, you cunt. You know, tone it down a little. You know, there's a bit of improvement to be made here and a bit of improvement to be made there. Don't get too comfortable. And likewise then, when you're beating yourself up about how much of a fucking dickhead you are, if you say it out loud, at least you're giving another part of yourself that chance to go, you're not a complete dickhead. Like, if you compare yourself to everybody that you know, you're not worse than all of them by any stretch of the imagination, so there's some glimmer of fucking hope there. Maybe fucking tone it down a bit, maybe go easy on yourself a little. Because there's a self-fulfilling prophecy